Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the now gone Black Ops Cold War Alpha. It was only around for 48 hours, but I did my best to capitalize on the game as much as I could. I put 17 solid hours of time into the game during those 48 hours, and I streamed every second of it, and in general, my experience was an extremely positive one. The same can't be said for everybody, however, and that is going to be the topic of today's video. If you follow Call of Duty closely, outside of just playing the game itself, then I'm sure you've seen that the Call of Duty community is essentially on fire right now, with everybody and their mother discussing the infamous skill-based matchmaking boogeyman, with many prominent pro players and content creators all claiming that even in the alpha, that Black Ops Cold War has a strong skill-based matchmaking system, like the one that we saw in Modern Warfare 2019. Now, while skill-based matchmaking has always been a very volatile subject within the community, mostly due to the fact that it's incredibly difficult to properly test for and detect, it was in fact confirmed by Treyarch's director of technology that skill-based matchmaking has been in literally every single Call of Duty game, even dating back to the glory days of Call of Duty 4 and Black Ops 2, which presumably means that even in Cold War, we are going to have skill-based matchmaking. In fact, Martin here even claims that he was the one who designed the skill-based matchmaking system for Black Ops 2, despite fans almost universally believing that skill-based matchmaking wasn't even really a thing until Advanced Warfare, and then after that it was in pretty much every game since, to lesser or greater extents. Now, according to Martin Donlin, who again is the director of technology over at Treyarch, skill-based matchmaking is one of many turnable parameters in a matchmaking system. This means that it can be adjusted to greater or lesser extents, with Modern Warfare 2019 being the most extreme example of developers deciding that new players and bad players alike need to be protected from experienced players, so much so that lobbies break up after every single match of Modern Warfare 2019 because the game is readjusting your invisible skill rating after every game that you play, and then it attempts to match you with other players of an equal skill level that are currently queuing for a match. Now, the downsides to this system are pretty obvious. If you're somebody who plays the game consistently, you're going to get the feeling that you're playing in a ranked mode, even though you're playing in a casual Call of Duty environment. There are no ranks, there are no leagues, there are no visible parameters of your skill or your progress. You're just thinking that you're playing a very casual mode, but oftentimes, you're actually playing a ranked mode depending on how good you are at that particular Call of Duty game. This is what frustrates players the most, because historically, Call of Duty does have a ranked mode within most of their games, but for some reason that system also applies to the casual playlists, and that's really frustrating because oftentimes Call of Duty is not very balanced in those casual playlists. There's a reason why the Call of Duty League and all of the ranked modes throughout history ban half the game's maps and half the game's modes and half the game's guns and half the game's perks and attachments. It's done so in an effort to boil down that particular Call of Duty game's experience to the most pure skill-based environment possible, but we don't even have that in public matches, yet for some reason there's this invisible skill rating in the background that kind of makes it feel like you're playing ranked, even though it's not ranked and you're not actually working towards a proper ranking system or a league system. You're just playing casually and still being ranked regardless, even though you have no idea what rank you actually are or what ranks the other players in your lobby actually are. In public matches, basically anything can happen. Anything is available for use, and since it's not technically a ranked mode, people oftentimes use goofy setups, or they AFK, or they let somebody else play on their account. They do any number of things, but at the same time, there's always this invisible ranking system in the background that you cannot see that is affecting all of your matchmaking experiences. Now, it's gotta be said, and you guys know I'm always going to give you my honest opinion on every subject, whether that's a popular opinion or not. It's gotta be said, I never really gave too much thought to this entire skill-based matchmaking system. It's been around in COD for a very long time. I don't talk about it a whole lot because I don't feel like it really affects me, and if it does, I really don't notice it or I don't really pay attention to it. I think in a lot of respects, skill-based matchmaking is blown out of proportion by the player base because it's this invisible, difficult to understand boogeyman that is the cause of all their problems in-game. I feel like once you tell somebody that there is potentially some other reason for them not doing well other than their own skill as a player or their own individual performance within a given match, once they hear that, they're going to jump on that reason to blame that as compared to themselves, which is why I keep referring to it as the boogeyman. If we look at skill-based matchmaking, at least in the way that it's received by the player base, it appears that based on a combination of your kill-death ratio, your win-loss ratio, your score per minute, and your recent game performance, the system will then try to match you with players of an equal skill level nearly all the time. Now, if that's going to be the case, then I wonder how it's possible for players to maintain good stats throughout the entirety of a game's lifecycle. If we look at things like the Call of Duty League, where the skill level of the players involved is at the absolute highest, everybody does roughly the same. Some people are positive 10, some people are negative 5, but in general, people have a KD very close to 1 in almost every single match, it seems, with a few outliers here and there. This is because the individual skill levels of those players are so close to one another that outcomes are determined on a gunfight by gunfight basis. Now, with that same system apparently being the case in public casual matches as well, how is it possible that players are able to maintain a 2 KD over the course of an entire game's life cycle, or even a 3 KD or a 4 KD? How is it that players are able to win 70, 75, even 80% of their matches throughout an entire year if everybody that they're playing against is constantly of an equal skill level? Now, obviously, these numbers I'm about to show you do not represent the experiences of the entire player base, as I am just one person, but let's take a look at some of my personal numbers over the years in Call of Duty in the games that I actually put a lot of playtime into. Now, by no means am I the best player ever, but I am somebody who plays the game a lot, and when I do, I don't really sweat every single game. I don't use overpowered setups. Like, in fact, as a YouTuber, I often stray away from the OP guns because it's super boring to watch someone's gameplay when they're using a broken setup, right? You want to see them use something that's a bit more bottom tier or mid tier as compared to just running the best possible guns every single match. And because of that, I use every single gun. I try to get dark matter in every single game, and in general, I prioritize winning every match I play and completing challenges. That's how I enjoy playing COD, and I've done that year after year, as compared to trying for things like nuclears and insanely high kill streaks and things like that. And as you guys can see from the numbers, despite the apparent existence of skill-based matchmaking in every single one of these games, I'm still able to maintain some pretty high stats, probably in the top 20-25% of the Call of Duty player base if I had to guess, because the average player is likely to have a kill-death ratio slightly higher or slightly lower than 1.0, and probably a win-loss ratio close to 50%. My stats are a bit better than that, so I'd say I'm above average, but by no means am I great. This is why I say that skill-based matchmaking is not something that overly concerns me in the Call of Duty franchise, because I don't feel like it really affects me all that much. I seem to do pretty much the same every single year. Some years I'm better, some years I'm slightly worse, depending on the game that's out and how I decide to play that particular game. But in general, it's never really bothered me that much, but it's definitely a big point of contention within the Call of Duty community. I think one of the aspects of skill-based matchmaking that perplexes me the most is if it's so solely based on stats, it seems like a lot of players who complain about the system in general are the players that the system wouldn't really affect. Now, not to be like super elitist here, but I feel like if you have a kill-death ratio that is somewhere between 1.0 and 1.5, you're probably in the bracket of average to slightly above average. And if the skill-based matchmaking system works in the way that everybody is claiming, that means that average players are oftentimes going to be playing against average players, right? There wouldn't be any of those 2 to 3 KD players in their lobbies in theory. So the question is, what are those average players hoping for? Are they hoping that they themselves, as already average skilled players, should be able to face people who barely have a grasp on how the controller functions? Like, what are they hoping the system's going to do for them? I really don't understand. I know it sounds elitist, but it seems like a situation where players are already not that good at the game, but instead of trying to improve at the game, they just want the people that they play against to be worse than them. Something like playing against recruit bots, except having those bots be actual people. If you look at the other end of the spectrum, those 2 KD, 3 KD, 4 KD players look down at those 1 to 1.5 KD players and they consider them to be the bots. Meanwhile, those 1 to 1.5 KD players look down to the 0.5 to 0.75 KD players and view them as the bots, so on and so forth, right? Everyone basically just wants an easier time and a more enjoyable experience when they play casual playlists in Call of Duty, and I completely agree with where they're coming from. I know throughout part of this video I have been playing devil's advocate a bit, but make no mistake here, I am firmly in the camp that skill-based matchmaking should be toned down a ton or removed entirely for Black Ops Cold War, as it's what I believe to be the best thing for the player base, and it's what the player base as a whole really seem to want. Now, as I said earlier, I personally don't mind skill-based matchmaking because I honestly don't think it affects me all that much, or even my enjoyment of a given Call of Duty game, despite having above-average stats. Even though this is a subject that doesn't personally bother me all that much, I know it bothers the overwhelming majority of the vocal minority, and I do agree that the casual modes should remain casual, and the ranked modes should remain ranked. There should be a very distinct feel between the two, and above all else, matchmaking should be based upon connection. With Activision toting that Modern Warfare is the most popular and best-selling Call of Duty game of all time, this means that there are now more players playing COD than ever, and therefore connections should be better than they have ever been before. If I queue up solo, I should be matched up with only people pretty much from my surrounding area, or even maybe just my state here in the US, and I shouldn't be matched up with people from around the world just because they happen to be queuing for a match at the exact same time and somehow match my invisible skill rating that the game refuses to show us. Now, at this point in the video, some of you may be wondering, why does skill-based matchmaking exist in the first place? If it's so controversial and people are talking about it so much that it's been trending on Twitter throughout the entirety of the alpha weekend, then why does it exist in the first place? Well, the simple answer is money, which is usually what most things boil down to at this day and age. Game companies have discovered that this new generation of gamers are an extremely fickle bunch, right? There are so many games to play, and every one of those game companies are jockeying to keep your eyes on their game for as long as possible, because not only does it look better to their investors to have really good player retention numbers, but also comes down to the simple fact that engaged players tend to spend more money. If the average player has invested 50 hours or even 100 hours into a game, they are much more likely to drop an extra $20 on skins in the shop than somebody who maybe hops on and plays a few hours a week. In an effort to engage as many players as possible, companies like Activision and Riot have incorporated skill-based matchmaking into most of their games, which lets new players and bad players essentially only play against each other in their own virtual form of a kiddie pool, so that their experiences are not tarnished by getting wrecked by people outside of their own skill level. This gives new players the illusion that they are skilled. It makes them feel good to see themselves doing well, and once they get that feeling, they're going to be hooked. They're going to keep playing the game at a very casual level, and all the while, they're going to become more invested in the game because they're doing well, not realizing that the only reason why they're doing well in the first place is because they're playing against people that have no idea what they are doing. When a new player jumps on Call of Duty for the very first time, they are going to have no idea just how good or bad they actually are. Because of this, instead of improving by honing their skills against people who actually know how the controller works, they just stay in that virtual kiddie pool that Activision has set up for them, and they are none the wiser as to just how the rest of the world experiences the game. On a personal note, I hate this because I think it's insulting to the intelligence of the player to give them the illusion that they are better than they actually are. It's like when you play basketball with a little kid and you shoot left-handed or let them run right by you because you want to make them feel good. You're a full-grown adult, you're playing basketball against a child, you let them win, and it's kind of fun for everybody, right? Or when your 9-year-old nephew wants to arm wrestle, you then pretend that you're trying as hard as you can before you eventually let them win because you want to make them feel good. That makes sense because we're talking about children here, but oftentimes when it comes to video games, especially the Call of Duty franchise, it's not marketed towards children, it's marketed towards adults, yet they're doing that same thing. Activision is letting you win that arm wrestling match even though you didn't earn it. They're letting you run right past all the competition and score that basket because they want you to feel good and spend money on their video games. A prime example of this would be Fortnite. I know I'm getting kind of off topic here, and I know it's sacrilege to talk Fortnite on a Call of Duty channel, but stick with me because I'm going somewhere with this. I think you guys are really going to like where this heads. A few months ago, I finally gave Fortnite a proper try. I had barely played the game whatsoever in the past, but I decided it was time to see what all the fuss was about, as I was basically doing nothing else besides waiting for Black Ops Cold War to come out. My very first game of Fortnite went way better than expected. At first, I was surprised that I was getting so many kills in the area that I dropped because it didn't seem like it was going to be a very popular location, but I kept finding people, and somehow, despite literally not knowing how to do things like build, work my inventory, or even shoot some of the guns, I kept coming out on top in all of these fights. It was partway through the match that I finally realized it. I was playing against fucking bots. Like, literally, I'm playing Fortnite online, I pressed the exact same join match button that somebody as good as Ninja would press, but because I'm new to the game, they literally put me in a game with bots and possibly a few other real-life players. By the end of the game, I won. Obviously, I'm playing against AI at this point. I got experience like I would have had I been playing against actual players. I completed challenges like I would have had I been playing against actual players, but it was all for naught. I was actually pissed because I immediately Googled what had happened to me, and it turns out that not only will your first match of Fortnite be played against literal AI bots that stand still, but throughout a lot of your initial levels in Fortnite, you're also going to be playing against a mix of bots and other low-skill, low-level players. This was literally the stupidest thing I have ever seen. I should not have been put into a game against bots just because I'm new. I should not be handed an 18-kill win my very first time playing the game, especially with how bad I am. I am really bad with a keyboard and mouse. I don't even know how to build structures in the game, yet I get an 18-kill win my very first time playing because the game wants me to feel good about myself. It's basically a system that just pats me on the head and says I'm a special boy and that I'm really good at the game, despite the fact that it didn't even make me aware of the fact that I was playing against bots. I had to go on and Google it. It's something that they put into the game to make players feel like they're better than they actually are, so that they get invested in the game and therefore spend more money. This is basically Fortnite's way of saying, hey, you're a special boy, now go buy the battle pass. This is essentially what skill-based matchmaking does in all games, including Call of Duty, and like I said, it's insulting to the intelligence of the player base, and it's insulting to the integrity of the game, and even to get lofty with it, it's insulting to the entire idea of a competitive online environment where the better player and the better team should come out on top. Now, I know I'm talking about casual modes right now instead of ranked modes, but even in casual modes, the best player should come out on top more often than not, and bad players should have to play well to actually do well, not be thrown so far down the invisible skill-based matchmaking ladder that they can eventually do well without fully understanding which button even makes them sprint. It's for that reason why I am on board with the hashtag removed skill-based matchmaking trend that is going through the community right now. I think Activision and subsequently the Call of Duty developers are doing the entire community a disservice that will have hugely impactful and negative long-term repercussions, all for the sake of making money in the short term. I know it's been a meme for years now, but it's time to make COD great again, and part of that would be reverting the entire skill-based matchmaking system that we see in Modern Warfare, and probably firing the guy that came up with it in the first place, and then revamping matchmaking to be 100% about your connection to the server when you are playing in casual modes. I'm all for skill-based team balancing, however, just to throw this in here towards the end. Skill-based team balancing is where once everyone is randomly thrown into the lobby based on connection, the game then divides those players up into two teams based on their skill ratings, right? So one team's going to have a mix of good players and bad players, the other team has a mix of good players and bad players, and they try to make the teams as even as possible so that the game is as close as possible, right? I think that's a good system. I think that's pretty much a necessity for any online video game, but when it comes to skill-based matchmaking, where the matchmaking itself is determined by your skill, that system needs to go. Add a ranked mode, add a proper league play system for Black Ops Cold War. Lots of players will gravitate towards that and leave casual modes to be what they are. Casual. Let people have fun. Let bad players be bad. Who cares if they suck? We all sucked at one point in Call of Duty. We all had to get good at one point. We didn't do so by having the game hold our hand. We did so by watching other players, watching YouTube, watching Twitch, and just playing the game in general, putting in the time to actually learn. Right? We don't need the game handing us bots to actually get better at the game or feel like we're special boys. We just need the game to actually put us into a match based on our connection, and then from there, actually playing the game is what's going to improve our skill level, not the game trying to improve ourselves for us. I feel like skill-based matchmaking does a lot more harm than good, and in fact, the only real good it does is it makes Activision a lot of money, and it appeases people that don't even care about the franchise in the first place. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm going to wrap up the video there. At first, when I sat down to make this video, I assumed it would be a rather short one, but it turns out that I have a lot to say about skill-based matchmaking and how this all works within the Call of Duty franchise and what it means to the game right now and what it can mean to the game in the future. And honestly, I could go on a lot longer. I could say a lot more about skill-based matchmaking, but I'm going to wrap up the video there, and I would love to pass the question off to you guys. What do you think? Should skill-based matchmaking be a core staple in Call of Duty, or should it be removed? What did you think of the skill-based matchmaking system that we saw in the Cold War Alpha? What do you think of skill-based matchmaking in general? Leave your thoughts and feedback down in the comments. I hope you guys all enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider leaving it a like. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.